Welcome to the American Families of Faith Project audio article series. This series is led by Lauren Marks and David Dollahite, co-directors of the American Families of Faith Project at Brigham Young University. Each article has previously been published in various scholarly journals, online magazines, and newspapers. Hello everyone, this is Laura McKeighen with the American Families of Faith Project. Today I'll be reading audio article number 45 entitled, Did COVID Strengthen Family Communication? This article was published in Public Square magazine on February 15, 2023, and was written by myself, Lauren Marks, and David Dollahite. And here we go. Did COVID strengthen family communication? Few single events in human history have affected a significant majority of people on Earth. The COVID-19 pandemic is one of those widely shared experiences. Nearly all individuals and families experience various levels of stay-in-place mandates, significant trials, and/or heartbreaking losses. As families hunkered down in their homes during the early days of the pandemic, family communication was often stretched and tested in new ways. In a recently published study that explores the impact the COVID-19 pandemic had on family communication, interview participants were asked the following questions. Quote, as a result of COVID-19 and its related outcomes, have you and/or your loved ones in some way re-envisioned your personal, marital, or family desired future? If so, how? And another question, quote, what are some thoughts, practices, beliefs, or tactics you or your family employed to reduce the negative influence of COVID-19 related stress? What were the positive outcomes of employing these methods to cope with COVID-19 related stress? These open-ended questions allowed participants the opportunity to describe what they thought to be the most important. Among the participant responses, researchers found myriad reports that were sorted into themes of negative, positive, neutral, and dualistic, both positive and negative, impacts and influences of COVID-19 on family communication. Theme 1, Negative Impacts. One participant in 20, or 5%, of participants shared reports of the pandemic creating a predominantly negative influence on family communication and relationships. A few grandparents and others explained the challenge of being separated from loved ones and having little face-to-face communication with extended family. One grandparent reported, quote, what we have truly missed is being able to hug our children and grandchildren, sitting around the living room talking and laughing, being able to share in their activities, end quote. Others mentioned the struggle of spending excessive time together in limited space. One wife reported, quote, I can't speak for my husband as we are not on the same page and have a lot of marital strife that has been exacerbated during the pandemic, end quote. For other participants, contentious and polarizing discourse was a negative to family communication. One participant said that during the pandemic, quote, there has been some discord between family members with differing political views and views on the pandemic. As a result, I try to avoid trigger discussions as there's nothing to be gained, end quote. Theme 2, Neutral Impacts. Minimal details were shared in the neutral reports regarding family communication due to the pandemic. About one participant in 8, or 12%, shared reports such as, quote, there were no real changes, end quote, in their family relationships, or that, quote, not much changed, end quote, during COVID. Theme 3, Positive Impacts. Nearly 3 out of 4 participants' feedback, or 74%, featured responses emphasizing positive influences the COVID-19 pandemic had on their family communication and relationships. Respondents shared that the pandemic-related shutdowns created an opportunity for families to deepen relationships, to communicate more frequently through technology with faraway family members, to communicate more frequently with co-residential family, and to develop a greater sense of family connection and unity. For many participants, the COVID shutdowns reportedly allowed their families an opportunity to slow down, and focus on family relationships. Across the lifespan, many young adults, parents with children at home, and older parents or grandparents describe taking time to contemplate relationships, reassess priorities, and plan for the future. One person reported, quote, "COVID-19 made me slow down and really look at my desired future. I want to be happy and I want to be successful. Marital problems are hard, and this was a time to really work on them because you are with this person 24/7 during quarantine. COVID-19 also allowed you to think about what really matters in life. Money is not the answer, but quality time and relationships with others is what matters. I have learned a lot during this pandemic." End quote. COVID-19 shutdowns influenced a greater volume and quality of communication by extended family through technological tools. Many participants shared how they actively chose to connect across distance. One reported, quote, "COVID offered us the opportunity to connect more often with relatives living further away, who were feeling socially isolated without their peer groups. We established a new normal for communicating with loved ones more frequently." End quote. Many discussed how they used Zoom video conferencing to build relationships. One reported, quote, "We focused on building relationships with our kids, grandkids, and relatives who live out of state by setting weekly Zoom calls, where we all got together and shared. We also had family Zoom dance parties. All of this has actually built our relationships as everyone had more time to be together that way." End quote. In addition to Zoom, others mentioned phone calls as their chosen method of family communication across distances. Someone shared, quote, "Emailing and texting are good, but a good old-fashioned phone call warms the heart and can last a long time." End quote. Another participant strengthened a sibling relationship over the phone. Quote, "My sister and I had not talked very much for 10 years. COVID-19 presented a hard situation to deal with, where we both were worried about our 90-year-old father in Florida. It gave us a common ground to talk and discuss how our lives were changed, and it has helped us each get through this while becoming closer." End quote. For many family members living under the same roof, there was a dramatic increase in the volume and quality of family communication. Several participants shared how increased family time together affected marital communication. One wife said, quote, "My relationship with my husband has grown tremendously as a result of increased time together, projects, and the ability to slow down and enjoy each other's company more. We have a greater appreciation for each other's jobs and how we parent our 2 children." End quote. As family communication increased and strengthened, family unity and connection were repeatedly identified as positive outcomes of the pandemic by participants. One reported, quote, "The situation has seemed to enable us to open up communication more. We have more chances to talk during the week as opposed to being away from each other and not having an abundance of time after work during the week. We seem closer and have reimagined what we want to do in the future." End quote. Another participant offered this unified, us-focused report. Quote, "This is absolutely true. Spending more time together with family members did help us agree and understand the fact and importance of talking more to each other, which gave us a better understanding of each other and how we behave in different situations. It did teach us a different and maybe the correct way we should live and spend time with our family members, respect each other, and stay away from internet and social platforms to an extent, keeping social media to a minimum level." End quote. Theme 4, Dual or Shifting Impacts. A small number of respondents, 5%, reported that the pandemic had influenced family communication in both challenging and beneficial ways. Many of these families were able to use changes and difficulties as an advantage, ultimately creating opportunities for relational growth. Even in the midst of difficult circumstances, some participants shared that by focusing on open and sincere communication, they were able to find some level of resolution to familial conflicts. One participant reported that increased family communication during shutdowns was stressful, but helpful overall. They explained that during COVID-19, quote, "We talked more, which could be stressful sometimes. However, we started speaking more openly about communication mistakes and errors we made interacting with one another, and how to improve that communication. So each party felt less annoyed. This actually accomplished something," end quote. Another parent shared, quote, "We had a few arguments bringing up past issues, and we all got annoyed with each other. However, we turned this around by switching to good heart-to-heart conversations and talking about some really deep feelings. We have learned to positively talk and not argue. We became closer in our relationships with each other. Overall, it has been a good thing," end quote. Some families reported that they pushed through the awkward moments and turned toward each other in ways that strengthened their relationships. One reflected that, quote, "We had very open communication. We tried our best to allow for an open environment where anyone and everyone can feel free to open up about their feelings. We wanted to talk and learn from each other. We got into some deep things with our families and tried to learn what each of us could work on to become better people. There was some confrontation and some awkward moments. Some of us fought. But because we were being open and sensitive, we were able to truly connect to each other and grow from each other in a way we never had before. We were able to point out each other's weaknesses and strengths. We grew closer to God together. We even learned that we were all struggling with something that no one had noticed before. Everyone was struggling with things. These were things that we never talked about before because we were taught to man up and not talk about feelings. We all learned that even though emotions are hard to understand, it's better to work through them than push them away," end quote. Conclusion. The impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic on family communication were both complex and varied. For some couples and families, the pandemic was largely difficult and destructive to family relationships. For others, it was a challenge that strengthened their bond, and for others, there were aspects of both. Learning that many couples and families managed to leverage profound challenges into positive communication processes and enhanced relationships brings great hope. These families exemplify Viktor Frankl's observation in Man's Search for Meaning that, quote, "If architects want to strengthen a decrepit arch, they increase the load which is laid upon it, for thereby the parts are joined more firmly together." Indeed, under the increased load of the pandemic, many families found or created ways to join more firmly together. Drs. Dave Dollahite and Lauren Marks are both professors in the School of Family Life at Brigham Young University. The American Families of Faith Project shares research-based ideas about ways of making faith come alive in marriage and family life.